Hello again, and welcome to Versio's Q&A Wednesday live for October 6th. I am your host, David Michalek. And over the past 9 years, I've conducted over 10,000 one-on-one credit consultations to help people improve their credit. And I am very much looking forward to helping you on our weekly live Q&A calls. We do this every Wednesday on both Facebook and YouTube, 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So please take a second, introduce yourself if you haven't already, and let me know where you're from. And if this is your first time here, please say hello. Welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Got a lot of people on for so early. So either we've all got nothing else to do or we're really interested in learning about credit. So thank you so much for being here. And I'm sure you've heard me say this before, if you're one of our regulars, that our credit report and scores play an enormous role in so many areas of our life. Insurance companies, landlords, mortgage brokers, our banks, and yes, even our employers, at least 70% of them, are looking at our credit report before they hire or promote to see how we honor our obligations. And having great credit is mandatory because credit reports, while they used to be just a little document that helped lenders figure out if we were going to pay our bills, they've evolved into a lot more than that. Today, they have become character reports. A lot of financial experts refer to them as adult report cards, and they tell the story of what we do when we are entrusted with credit. And that's why we do these weekly live Q&A sessions. Welcome welcome to Credit Versio. Welcome to today's Q&A. And during today's live broadcast, I want you to feel free to post your questions about credit reports, credit scores, the repair process. If you've got questions about how to use Credit Versio, please post it. I am happy to answer those questions for you. So you got a handful of people here. Thank you so much. Rysal, sorry if I'm butchering that one. LaFrance, great. From Louisiana, welcome. South Carolina, that's great. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Okay. Oh, and Jose, all right. My Credit Versio tells you what to do. Yeah, it does. It actually guides you through the process. So I always like to start off the Q&As with a little bit of a theme. And today I want to talk about the dispute process. And I love this part of the day. I've had a really unique week in that my customer service manager, he pretty much handles all the customer service calls, even though there's 124,000 people who've created Credit Versio accounts. We only get a handful of calls every single day because the software pretty much guides you through the process. What I've loved since, or I'd say for the past maybe week or so, is Travis has been on his honeymoon. So congratulations to him. He'll be back tomorrow. But I've had the pleasure of being on the phones this week and just talking to people and answering questions. Absolutely love it. I miss that part of the credit repair and the credit coaching side. And I've had some great and very interesting conversations during the week. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about the dispute process. And of course, if you have questions, feel free to just fire them away. They don't have to be related to what I'm talking about. If something pops in your mind and you want to get an answer, just let me know. Okay, so first question here. Let's see. How much in real time does scores reflect with credit agencies? That's a great question. So we'll start off with this, our first question of the day. So let me just break down how this works. So the question is, just to repeat it for anybody who's just joining us, we're having a lot more people join us. How much in real time does credit scores reflect with credit agencies? So a credit report is actually a query. So a lot of people believe that we have credit reports just sitting around at the credit bureaus waiting to be pulled by a lender or a bank. And that's actually not the way that it works. Let me paint a scenario for you. Let's just say I go into a car dealership and I want to buy a car. So probably the finance manager there is going to take my application. He's or she's going to enter it into the computer. And what that's going to do is that's going to send a signal over to whichever bureau they're using. Let's just say it's Experian. And it's going to say, hey, Experian, I want a credit report for David Michalek. Here's his information, his name, social, date of birth, address. And what happens is, at that moment, Experian goes in and dives into this massive database. And it builds my credit report right there at that very moment in time based upon what information is available at that very moment. And So there's no report sitting around like, oh, here's David's report right over here. Let's get that and let's give it to the car dealership. It's generated right then and there. That's why we call, as I said, credit reports a query. It's good for that moment in time based on what's on your credit report at that moment in time. And when that credit report comes back to the car dealership, using that example still, and this is very, very quick, maybe seconds really. And as it comes through, my credit report is going to be scored by whatever model is the favored model. So chances are pretty good that it's going to be scored by a FICO score, about a 90% chance, could be Vantage, who knows. But most big lenders, big banks are going to use a FICO version. It's probably going to be FICO Auto 8. So if you're unfamiliar with the different versions of FICO score, it's something we can talk about, but John and I talk about that quite a bit. And if you're not familiar with John Alzheimer, he's usually on with me. And if you're asking yourself, where's John today? He unfortunately couldn't make it. Apparently his son is quite the soccer player, and he's at one of the finals games or something like that. But he will be with us next week and the week after. Okay, but getting back to answering that question. So everything that is on the credit report at that moment in time will be scored. So my credit report comes into the dealership, FICO Model 8, let's just assuming that's the model that's being used, will create a score at that moment in time. Now, then that goes away. Then it doesn't exist anymore. Now, if tomorrow, let's say I go, I mean, not that I would do this, but let's just say I go shopping 2-3 days later at another car dealership. Say I didn't buy a car from that dealership I was at, and 2-3 days later I go to another dealership and they pull my credit again. Same thing happens. It goes in, grabs a brand new, generates a brand new credit report, and then scores it at that moment in time. It could be different. So this is answering your question. I think it's Ernell. Sorry if I didn't say that correctly. The point is about real time is that is credit reports and scores are always real time, but for that moment in time. So in that 3 days that passed, or 2-3 days, whatever it was that I said, if something changed, meaning if a creditor updated something, if I paid down a credit card balance, my scores could go up. They could be different. If I racked up a bunch of credit card debt in that time and it had got reported to the bureaus, my score could go down. So that credit report, real time, that score, real time, can be different from one day to the next. Okay, great question. Hope that answers your question. If not, we can expand on that. All right. Amanswell, man, I love seeing the regulars coming in here. Same thing with Arian, I believe. How long does it usually take for the negative effects of a new credit card to wear off? Ah, good. Assuming utilization was already at 0 and the report was diverse, so the only expected effects were negative. So that's a really good question. And the answer to these questions is always, and if you've been watching the live on occasion, you'll know that we always answer these questions with, it depends. It depends on a lot of variables. For some people with really high credit scores, long history, which that history is about 15% of your score. For a lot of people, if you got 20, 30 years of credit history, 10 years of credit history, and you get a new credit card, you're going to slightly lower your average age of account, so you may see nothing. The inquiry may or may not have any effect. Now, one thing I will tell you, I did talk to a client about 3 weeks ago, and she had, in fact, she was on the live here, and we were talking back and forth, and she sent me her credit report because she was trying to figure out why her scores dropped about 70 points. And what had happened is she opened up, all of her credit was new. It was less than 8 months old. She had 2 new cards from, I think, March and April of this year. And then she got 2 more new cards just the last month. So what happened is she cut her already short age of accounts in half. And now she's got 4 credit cards, and she had balances on, I think, 3 of them. So now she shortened the age of accounts, and the other section of your credit score, this is 30%. This is the amount of debt. This is your credit utilization. This is how much you owe. She had balances on multiple cards, which FICO doesn't like that, especially if you've got new credit. So that dropped her score. So Arian, the answer to your question is, it may have a little bit of effect. It may have no effect. But largely what's happening is you're slightly reducing the average age of your account. Now that's something that you heal from naturally over time. Could be a couple, 2, 3 months. So you have the lowering effect of the average age of account for that card, yet everything else is starting to get 1 month older, and that's starting to season. So it's not a very long process, but again, it depends. You're certainly not going to see some massive drop in score, providing you have other good credit to help lift. Okay, all right. Yes, you are very welcome. And Arian, one of these days I got to learn how to pronounce that correct. Hopefully that's so. Maybe you can spell it phonetically in the comments here, and that way I can get it right. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the dispute process, and I've had this conversation probably 2, 3 times, 4 times every single day since my customer service manager Travis has been on his honeymoon. So the dispute process is really not all that complex. One of the things that is part of the credit repair industry, and I think maybe one of the reasons why when we're talking about credit repair providers, I'm talking about credit repair companies that perform the service. I think the reason why credit repair, that side of it, sort of has a little bit of a sketchy reputation is they really do a lot of selling and marketing that there's special techniques and special words you can say, and if you quote this law, you're going to get this kind of result. And frankly, I did believe that too many years ago when I got in this business. I worked for a very successful credit repair company, and that's what we thought worked because the guys that owned the company I worked for got trained by somebody who was trained by somebody else who was trained by somebody else, and that's how we all learned how the dispute process worked. What really changed that is we eventually met somebody who worked for the credit bureaus. Okay, this is a very rare thing. Most people who work in the credit repair space have no idea what goes on in the credit bureaus because they don't know anybody from the credit bureaus. Credit repair and credit bureaus, these are not relationships that usually you see take place until you get to a certain size. So what happened was I ended up meeting a guy. In fact, I've interviewed him on. He's a friend of mine. He works for Smart Credit now, but he was with TransUnion for 25 years, and for a good chunk of that, he used to run the entire dispute division, 15,000 dispute letters per day, and his entire team is what managed that. So I learned a great deal about what happens when a dispute letter gets sent to the bureaus, what they do with it, what they want to see, what they don't want to see. Same thing if you've joined me on other live broadcasts. John Alzheimer has been with me, and John used to work for Equifax, and a good chunk of that period of time, he also worked in dispute resolution. So it's really interesting to get the perspective of somebody who worked at Equifax in dispute resolution and TransUnion at dispute resolution, having both of these guys be friends of mine, and they both know each other, and hearing the exact same story. And the story comes out like this. The dispute process is not complicated. Okay, it's really about finding an error or a mistake or asking for verification. It's your right to dispute anything on your credit report that you want. Under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, they have to make sure, or they have to delete, I should say, or repair any account, and these are the 4 words: erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. And by the way, that unverifiable is usually the reason why a lot of things get deleted. So the dispute process is very simple. I'm curious, before I go into more detail, if you're using Credit Versio, just let me know in the comment what round you're on. Are you on round 1, 2, 3, 4? Are you on round 5? Have you finished? Are you not using it yet? So type it into the comments because that's going to help shape a little of what I talk about. And while you're doing that, let me see if I got a question here. Okay, what is the max number of rounds in your experience? Okay, great. Love that it's relevant to the subject matter, although it doesn't matter if it is or not. Happy to answer your question. Really, the rule of thumb is about 4 rounds, maybe 5. Now, one thing that's different, I would have given you a different answer about 2 months ago. And the reason for that is we had a really big system update not too long ago. The system update was Credit Versio's ability to find up to 20 different kinds of errors on credit reports. So now we're seeing credit reports coming in on that fifth round, where credit Versio is like, I see something now. This is a wrong balance. This is a duplicate account. The late payment status on this one on Equifax for this account is different than on Experian, and it'll create those disputes with that language on the inside of it. Now that's pretty new. Even though Credit Versio was incredibly effective before, now it does stuff that not even the best human beings can do. Like, I would never want to compete with Credit Versio reading a credit report to figure out what's wrong with the credit report, especially if it's 20, 30, 50 pages long. Okay, so round one, round two, okay, great. So in the dispute process, one more question here, then I'll get right back on track. Oh, good. It's REN. Okay, great, got it. Okay, dispute round, have you seen? Then what? I'm on second dispute round personally. Okay, I'll get to that question in just a second because we want to talk about what happens after you're done with the dispute process. So round one, and I've had this conversation, I don't know how many hundreds of times here at Credit Versio. The conversation is people send out that round one dispute, and sometimes we see a lot of stuff get deleted. Sometimes we see nothing get deleted. So what's the difference between the two? Well, of course, it has a lot to do with the credit item itself, with the account. Is there a mistake on it? Is there an error? How old is it? There's lots and lots of variables. But one thing that always is true with a round one dispute is a round one dispute is just round one. It's not the end all be all. It's just that first dispute letter that you're sending out to the creditors to let them know that, hey, I got some questions about this. I don't agree with this. I found an error. This is inconsistent. Now, keep in mind, this is my opinion. I don't have any real hard facts on this, but if you were to poll people who have been in the credit repair space for 5 to 10 years, 10 years, like pretty close to what I have, you're going to hear all of us say, I would wager a lot of money that you'd hear us all say about the same thing. That round one it can be successful, but it really things get started at round two. What happens a lot of times with round one, especially when creditors and bureaus know that you sent the letter, it's not coming from a credit repair company. They know that you sent it. And there's a lot of reasons why they can tell. When they get that letter from the individual, what they know is that about 80% of the time, people who send that first round, they don't send a second one. They send a dispute, it comes back, nothing really happens, or the results were very underwhelming, and they just give up. They're like, oh, shoot, I don't know what to do now. I shot my shot. I sent my dispute. Now what? I don't know what to do. So this is why credit repair companies are traditionally much better at this than the individual. This is why Credit Versio is much better than the individual, because it understands that, hey, round one is just round one. That's just your first knock at the door. Nothing happened. Nobody opened the door. Okay, great. Now it's time for round two, and that's where things get started. When creditors get that second round dispute, they realize, like, okay, this person is in that 20%, whatever that number is, but small, of people who are just not going to go away. Okay, so now it's time that we need to do what we're supposed to do under the law, which is perform what's called a reasonable investigation. And that's when a lot of times you see things taking place. So, Amanswell, round two, you're in round two, great. Okay, so if you didn't see anything in round one, or you saw whatever you saw in round one, it's kind of irrelevant. Round two is really where a lot of times things get started. Round three, round two, round three are usually your strong rounds. Round four, surprisingly, we see a lot of results in round four. And by the way, just to give you the perspective of a guy that worked for white glove full service credit repair, that kind of surprises me, because back in that previous life, that previous position, when we were sending out the dispute letters for our clients, round four was kind of a dead round. Round five, not really anything. And we did do a round six. Sometimes we'd send that directly to the creditor, but by that time, the creditor's already been disputed by the credit bureau. So there's not really any point to that. So what's amazing about Credit Versio, and this is my suspicion, and a lot of people that are in this space tend to agree with my assessment of this, the reason why people are seeing more of a successful round on successful round four doing credit Versio than, say, a credit repair company is that the bureaus know it's coming from you. They know it's not coming from a bureau. And the great thing about that, whether you know this or not, is by law, bureaus can legally ignore letters that come from credit repair companies. Okay, that's called Exception G. It's right there in the Fair Credit Reporting Act. It's been there for 51 years. I can't tell you how many times people have posted comments on our Facebook page saying, "Oh yeah, there's no such thing as the bureaus being able to ignore credit companies, letters from credit repair companies." And then I post the link with the Exception G, and I hear crickets after that. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing clients using Credit Versio getting success late in the game, because they know that these are individually sent letters and they know they can't ignore them. Okay, let's see. Where am I hitting? Let's see. Okay. Should the text be edited or more personal to be more effective? No. Let me qualify that a little bit. You'll always hear me say the best dispute reason is the one that explains why the account is not reporting correctly. Now, if looking at the accounts you don't see anything that you identify as a mistake, let Credit Versio do it for you. That's what those suggested reasons are for. Credit Versio is making that assessment based off of millions of disputes sent by tens of thousands of users. Short is better. Now, I know this for a fact. This is something I've been told by Steve from TransUnion and John at Equifax. When you start trailing off on a story like, hey, I got up this morning, I wasn't feeling too good, and I've got this impending, job review, and I haven't been feeling great lately. And then I had this phone call with my mom, and I wasn't feeling too good about that. And, oh, and by the way, I got these late payments. When you start giving a whole backstory about why something shouldn't be there, you're going to lose not only the software that's reading the letter, but also when it goes into a manual review, if it does, where somebody else is reading it, you're going to lose them too. Short and to the point. Maybe 3, 4, 5 sentences. Tell them what's wrong, and then tell them what kind of outcome you'd like. That's it. That's the formula. It's not complicated. Don't quote. By the way, I get in arguments with people not online, which is a stupid thing to do, but they'll say something like, "Hey, you got to quote the law." Why? You think the bureaus don't know the law? Everything that they do is dictated by federal law. Their entire processing system, all of their policies and procedures are dictated by federal law. They don't need you to quote it. They already know what it is. So that's a waste of time. Simple. Just do a simple what the average person would do. That's all you need. Okay. Hiram, have you ever seen a situation where you are disputing late payments on a closed account and comes back with more negative updated information? Not really on closed accounts, because typically they're dead. Now, I have seen that happen on open accounts, but it's very rare. And here's where it happens. Let's just say I've got an account on all three bureaus. And on TransUnion and Experian, it shows that I've got 4 30-day lates. And on Equifax, it shows I have 2 30-day lates. Okay, well, which one of them is wrong? So yeah, chances are, if I got 4 30-day lates on TransUnion and Experian, and I've only got 2 30-day lates on Equifax, chances are pretty good that Equifax is just not caught up. Somewhere along the line, they're missing 2 30-day lates that I probably had. So, in fact, I'll tell you what Credit Versio does under those conditions. Credit Versio will see that. By the way, that's called I forgot the name of the error that it's called. Sorry, I thought I'd be really slick and remember it, but I completely forgot what it's called. But it'll realize that you've got 2 more late payments on TransUnion and Experian, but it's not going to let Equifax know that. It'll say, hey, TransUnion and Experian, hey, Equifax only has 2 30-day lates, but you're showing 4. What's up with that? Okay, I'm paraphrasing. That's not really what it says, but that's the spirit of what it's going to say. Now, Credit Versio is not going to have you send a letter to TransUnion saying, hey, you've got 2 less late payments than everybody else. Why don't you add 2 more late payments? It's not going to do that. It's a very smart system. So, but to answer your question here, you want to dispute accounts where there's where you think there's something that's wrong with them. If you're looking at a credit report and you've got a bunch of late payments on 2 bureaus and there's very few on the one, yeah, you probably don't want to tell that one bureau that, hey, they're falling behind a little bit and don't have as much late information. But as far as the dispute process being punitive, no. So nobody's going to come back at you and say, hey, Hiram decided to dispute. Let's add some more stuff on there that's not his. It doesn't work like that. Okay, Ernie, where can I find dispute results on the Credit Versio webpage? Go in your credit items, use your filter. So if you're on a desktop, the filter is to your left. If you're on mobile, the filter is right above. And click repaired and deleted. And it'll show you the accounts that have been repaired or deleted. Okay, awesome answer, short to the point. Great, it's very rare I'm short to the point. I appreciate that. Okay. DNS TV in Georgia, round 1. Awesome, great. You know what I love about people doing this in Georgia? Georgia and South Carolina have 2 things in common. They don't permit credit repair companies to be there. I think they don't even allow attorneys to do credit repair, or they can, but as an ancillary service. I don't think you can go to an attorney for credit repair. They absolutely don't like that. That happens to be in the backyard of, or that's where Equifax is. It took me a second to remember. So I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but it's really cool to see people using Credit Versio from these states where they can't hire anybody. Can't hire Lexington Law or CreditRepair.com, or at least I don't think you can unless they've put an office there. I'm not exactly sure, but I just know that the rules are pretty aggressive. That if any kind of credit repair is being done in those states by a company, you can do it all you want. DNS TV, you can do credit repair all you want. Credit Versio isn't a credit repair company. It's software. It's just guiding you through the process. A lot better than what a credit repair company would do. But you're sending out your own letters, and that's what that state cares about. So congratulations for finding this. I'm glad you're using Credit Versio, and good luck with your round 1. Okay, Eric, wanted to thank you and Credit Versio. After my first round, I got a Chase charge-off removed from my reports. It was previously listed as paid for less than owed, but now it's off. The letters work. Awesome job, Eric. Congratulations. And it just goes to show, like, to make a point here, that dispute reason that resulted in that account being removed wasn't pages of a bunch of nonsense quoting the law and telling what they got to do or threatening or being a jerk or whatever. It was simple and to the point. Credit Versio understands how to dispute charge-offs, understands how to dispute paid charge-offs, might have had some data on that kind of account itself, and prompted you with the correct dispute reason, unless you wrote something custom. But most people just do the suggested reason. So great job, Eric. Congratulations. Messiah Sadler. Okay, hello. My bankruptcy has been discharged, and I have derogatory remarks from the creditors that was discharged that is still visible. And Credit Versio is saying, dispute it. Should I? My answer to that is it's completely up to you what you want to dispute. Our rule of thumb here is we can't lead you because that would be credit repair. But you could, if you wanted to, dispute anything on your credit report you would like. Now, let me give you a little reality check about bankruptcy. Bankruptcy clients, when I was doing for 7.5 years, when I worked for a very expensive, very high-end credit repair company, bankruptcy clients were probably my favorite. And there's a couple reasons why. First of all, they were really easy to make happy because it was not complicated to remove a lot of the accounts that were included in bankruptcy. So those accounts that Credit Versio is identifying as negative, yeah, they're still there. They're part of your credit history, and they're more than cosmetic. They are being scored. They are part of that process. And one of the great things about doing a dispute on accounts included in bankruptcy is those creditors tend to not care much anymore. Okay, they were wiped out in bankruptcy. When you send a dispute, by law, they have to perform what's called a reasonable investigation. And that could take them time, energy, and they got to pay somebody to do it. And a lot of times they just don't care. They really don't care. There's nothing in it. They don't care what's on your credit report. They don't. The only time they care about what's on a credit report is if they're looking to determine whether somebody's going to be a good credit risk, and they want access to a credit report to get a score and to do an analysis. But as far as after bankruptcy, they don't care. So if you're sending a dispute letter, not all the time, and sometimes not even most of the time, but a good portion of the time, those accounts might get deleted just because the creditor isn't going to respond. So they're either going to hit the delete button or they're not going to respond at all. And the bureaus, who've got your back, by the way, the bureaus want information on your credit report in their database to be accurate. If they see that that creditor didn't respond, they might wipe it out. It's one of the reasons why you do bureau disputes. You want to recruit the bureaus to help you. Okay. Hope that answers your question. Jose, does bankruptcy really go off if it's accurately? No. This is the part that I really want people to wrap their head around. The credit repair process is not it's not a hustle. There's no magic technique. There's no special letters that can make an account that's reporting accurately get deleted. Either an account is accurate and verifiable or it's not. And the dispute letters don't change that. It just flushes it out. So with your bankruptcy, if you file bankruptcy and if it's accurate, you can dispute it. But the bureaus can come back and talk to SageStream, talk to LexisNexis, do it quick just to verify the data and come back and say, yeah, it's your bankruptcy. Pretty good chance you might get it deleted from TransUnion because TransUnion is really not much for disputing public records. They never have. So a lot of times you'll get that little bit of success with it removed from TransUnion. Does that really do a lot of good? No, not really. Not unless you go to a creditor who just pulls a TransUnion credit report. And frankly, there's not that many of them. If it's going to be a one bureau pull, most of the time that's going to be Experian. And again, if a bankruptcy is accurate, if it's there as it should be, it will remain for the full 10 years. Now, going back, well, why did I say bankruptcy clients were some of my favorites? One of the big reasons for that is it's actually not hard to recover from a bankruptcy. 24 months, 36 months, I've seen people with high 700s, not high, rephrase, low to mid 700 scores with a bankruptcy. In fact, a good friend of mine that I used to work with, he had a bankruptcy from a business filing. I remember seeing his 790 credit score. This was a FICO Model 8 across all three bureaus, 790s, and his bankruptcy was still on his credit report. It was about 8 years old, so it was a little older, maybe 7 years old. But it was the Chapter 7, so it stays for 10 years. But the point of this subject is, don't get discouraged with a bankruptcy on the credit report. Hey, if you had to file, you had to file. It's done and done. The important thing is that you rebuild smartly. If you haven't gone through the credit coaching course, the videos in Credit Versio, or the ones that are on our YouTube channel, go through them. You got to understand what to do and what not to do. People file bankruptcy, then they tend to get back in trouble again because they just don't quite understand the way that credit works. It's not that complicated. You just have to know what the rules are, and the more space between that you put yourself between that bankruptcy, and that space is time, the easier it is to recover. So, yeah, you can dispute the accounts that are in the bankruptcy. Probably a pretty good chance a lot of that stuff's going to get deleted. It's going to help you to recover even faster. I wouldn't really have an expectation that the bankruptcy is going to be deleted, and if it doesn't, don't worry about it. It's not, you got bigger fish to fry, which is trying to rebuild credit smartly. Okay, where did I leave off? Okay, here another question. What happens if a dispute update comes back before the 40 days listed in Credit Versio? How do you get Credit Versio to prepare your next round, your next letter to challenge prior to the 40-day update? Let me just read this one more time, make sure I understand what you're asking here. There's a dispute update. It's back before 40 days listed. Okay. Here, I'm not exactly sure I understand what you're asking. Let me just explain real quick how it works, and then maybe we can flesh it out a little bit better. Okay. So when your first credit report comes in Credit Versio, the 40-day countdown starts. You've got about 6 to 7 days to print and mail your letters, because you want to have at least 3 days for those letters to travel in the mail and get to the bureaus. 4 would be better. It's always best to create your dispute letters and mail them out within 2, 3, 4 days. That way, you've got that 10-day window, and then a full 30 days for the bureaus to do their investigation. Now, what's going to happen is you're going to get responses in the mail. If you've got like a Credit Karma or Smart Credit Identity IQ or MyFICO or whoever, they're going to give you notifications that stuff is changing. Okay, but Credit Versio is not a monitoring service. It's a repair platform, and it's going to wait 40 days because it wants everything to wrap up. It doesn't. If you did 2 disputes or you did 100 disputes, it wants to wait until all that clears up, that 30-day timeline is passed, and then it's going to bring in a new credit report. Okay, from there it'll tell you what happened, and for all the accounts that got deleted, repaired, if any at all, depends on your case. It'll show that in the credit items section on your account. Now, for accounts that you disputed in round 1 that didn't see any kind of a change, or I shouldn't say that, are still there, then it escalates to round 2, and you repeat the process. So you got about 10 days, well, not 10 days, you got a couple of days to create your letters and send them out, but Credit Versio gives you 40 days, 10 days to print and get it in the mail and travel time in the mail, and 30 days for that investigation before it brings it in. So I'm not sure if that answered your question. If not, then maybe you can get a little bit more specific and we can drill it down for you. Okay. JL67, hello and welcome. Eric, I'm down to my last negative on 2 of my reports. It's a voluntary repossession. On my Experian report, it shows that it was reaged by BMW Financial as of February 2021. Actually, okay. This is, Eric, I'm glad you asked this question. This is really, really important question. Okay. You said it was reaged by BMW Financial as of February 2021, and now it isn't scheduled to fall off. It is not possible to reage a debt anymore. Ever since Metro 2, this is the new language that is used by credit bureaus and credit and data furnishers. Behind the scenes, the DOFD, it's called date of first default. Date of first default, I'll just bring you back a little bit. Remember, Eric, when you had that first 30-day late on that BMW, and then it went to 60, then 90, then 120. Maybe you got caught up here and there, but whatever that last, or that last 30-day late that led to the 60, 90, 120, and then the charge-off repo. Repossession is just a charge-off. Okay, that 30-day late is where that 7-year mark begins, and it cannot change on a closed account. Now, what you're seeing on that February 2021 is probably date of last activity, date of last update, and these are not read by FICO, and they're not read by Vantage scores. These are just for you. See, what you and I see, we call it a credit report. So if I go print a credit report from my Experian.com, or if you grab it from Smart Credit or Identity IQ, what you and I are seeing is called a consumer credit disclosure. Okay, it's just a very dumbed down, easy for anybody to understand report. That's not the data, or that's not all the data that the credit bureaus have. Inside of there, oh, and by the way, the DOFD, the date of first default, I've never seen it on a consumer credit disclosure. It's not there. So don't worry about BMW reaging your account. It's actually technically not possible. So I promise you, Eric, that February of 2021 date that you're seeing, I mean, unless you paid them, then that can change things. But all you're seeing is a last update, date of last activity. That's just the creditor telling the bureau that this is the most recent time we've updated this field on the consumer credit disclosure. So if you need more information on that, just let me know. Off September 2028, isn't this illegal? Yeah, it certainly would be. But I'm not sure where you're getting that 2028 from. So if it's truly been re-aged and you haven't made a big payment or whatever, then that wouldn't be correct. It's going to be 7 years from the date of first default. And like I said, not something they can change. Okay. Next question. What if you miss the window to send out a dispute letter? Do you have to wait 30, 40 days to get a new window? It depends. When your countdown gets down to 30, you are eligible for a new credit report through Identity IQ and Smart Credit. So you can log directly into those accounts and order a new credit report. You don't want to send letters that are completely off schedule, because Credit Versio is it's not going to understand that, or it's going to understand that you're off your timeline. And the reason why you don't want to do that is you want to make sure that the creditors and the credit bureaus have that full 30 days. So what happens when people get off timeline is, let's say they got a new credit report coming in 50. Actually, I just had this conversation today with somebody. They had a new credit report coming in 19 days. So you don't want to send out a dispute, because in 19 days, that's not enough time for all the creditors to conduct their investigation. So it depends on where you are. If you're like 15 days out, then wait 5 days. When you hit day 10, then you can go into your Smart Credit or Identity IQ account and order a new report, because it's been 30 days for them. Bureaus, you get a new credit report, or you're eligible for a new credit report every 30 days with your credit report provider. But by programming, Credit Versio is not going to go grab that report for 40 days. So I hope that answers your question. If not, then we can drill it down. Okay, Max, just signed. I suspect that means that you just joined Credit Versio. Congratulations. Make sure you get those round 1 dispute letters out as fast as you can, and good luck with your disputes. Okay, so those DOLA, or it's a DOFD, data first default. Don't age your accounts. See, re-age your account. No. Well, first of all, you're not going to see. Oh no, date of last activity or date of last report. No, it has nothing to do with your date of first default. So the DOFD does not change. It's hard coded, and chances are you're not going to see that anywhere. It's in the software itself. So don't be concerned with that. I know it freaks people out all the time. Trust me, I totally get it. When I look at people's credit reports and it said last activity or date of last update, I get it all the time. Hey, they re-aged it. No, they didn't re-age it. That's just the last time the data furnisher provided an update to the credit bureau. It doesn't mean it was re-aged. Okay. By the way, John Olsheimer wrote a great article on that about re-aging. It's at creditversio.com, not in your portal where you're doing your repair, but on creditversio.com itself. And it's in the credit coaching section. He wrote a great article. And one of the things in there he says is like, it can never, ever, 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 ever. He doesn't say it quite like this, but you cannot re-age your account. So that was him, former FICO, former Equifax, America's #1 credit expert, saying, no, you can't re-age your account. Don't worry about it. And he explains why, which is essentially a repeat of what I just told you. Okay. DDA, Super Soldier. That's a cool name. Okay. Does sending a letter of intent to sue help get items removed? No, never do that. Okay. So my Equifax and Experian are clean, but TransUnion won't budge or anything. No. Okay. I love that you asked this question. And it's an opportunity for me to expand on what I had said earlier about creating simple dispute letters. First of all, rule number 1, the credit bureaus and your creditors are not afraid of you at all. Think about this. They get, and this is nothing against you, Didi. This is, or Dida. This is just the real world we're talking about here. They get, every bureau gets about 15,000 dispute letters every single day. Every single day. And people say crazy stuff. That's one of the nice things about knowing people who worked in the credit bureaus. You get to hear all the funny stories. It's almost like having military or cops in the family. You'll always hear really interesting stories. Same thing with people who work in the credit bureaus. So one thing to keep in mind is, if you were going to sue them, if you had the capacity to sue them, the letter would come from an attorney. Okay, there's no, threats don't work with bureaus, quoting laws don't work with bureaus. The best thing to do is to create a dispute letter that's based on what's wrong with the account. Now, if you don't see anything, let Credit Versio break down strategically, letter over letter, that account. Now, it doesn't mean it's coming off. As I said earlier in this video, accurate accounts, there's no provision in the law for accurate accounts to be removed or accurate and verifiable. What you're banking on is Credit Versio maybe find something inaccurate about the account, or that the creditor is not able to verify the information. So, and by the way, if it's been removed, what did you say? It's been removed, Equifax and Experian? Okay, so if the account's been removed from Equifax and Experian, Credit Versio is going to see that. and it's going to say, hey, TransUnion, this account was removed from Equifax and Experian, yet you're holding on to it. Can you please explain why? Now, as it is, TransUnion doesn't really owe you an explanation like that, because they don't care what Experian and Equifax do. These are separate companies, and they have their own investigation process. But shockingly, and I say shockingly, I'm personally, as a credit expert, as somebody who's been doing this for 9 years plus, I'm a little surprised that that dispute is working. We used to do something like that when I did full service credit repair, and bureaus are like, yeah, and so what? We do our own thing. But because you're sending them, because they're coming from you and not a credit repair company, I'm a little surprised that that dispute tends to work. I mean, it worked a lot more than what it worked for a full service credit repair company. Again, I'm not making any guarantees or projections. What I'm saying is that I'm surprised at the rate that it's working for people who are using Credit Versio. Okay, thank you so much. We appreciate your patience and wisdom. You are very welcome. That's what I'm here for, and I love teaching this stuff. Credit is one of those things where, listen, the way that I got into this industry is I messed up my credit in the worst way. Right out of the gate, 18 years old. Had no idea what the consequences were for me not, I got a Sears card. I remember getting my first Sears card. I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, maybe I'll pay it. Maybe I won't pay it. Never really thought much about it. And it turned out I didn't pay it. And that thing haunted me for years. And so did everything else. So ideally, I wish I could get people in high school and explain this to them. And that's something that we're sort of working on, is me doing classes into high school groups, into colleges. But, better now than never. And I'm glad you're here, and I'm glad you appreciate the information. And this is a great opportunity to learn from my mistakes, to learn from other people's mistakes, and learn how credit works, and just do the best you can to have the best credit you possibly can have. Okay, JL67. That sounds like some kind of like a weapon from Halo or something like that back when I used to play. Okay, is it possible to maybe show us and do a video on what a real credit report looks like other than the consumer reports, and explain the different fields and data and dates? I wish I could. Nobody's ever seen one outside of the credit bureaus. In fact, I didn't know this was a thing until about maybe 7-8 years ago, when I was at a training seminar, and there were a bunch of bureau people there. John Olsheimer was one of the guys that was there, and he joins me a couple times a month. And they broke down what a credit report is. Essentially, a credit report is everything you and I have ever done. So all of the houses that I bought back in the day, my first house I bought 21 years ago. Okay, that's not on my credit report, on my consumer credit disclosure, because it's just aged off. It's old. All the cars that I've bought and paid for, everything that all the loans that I have taken out and paid for that are now 15, 20 years old, they're not on my credit report anymore. On my consumer credit disclosure. I got to make sure I differentiate that here. So if I were to pull up and show you my Experian, my credit report from Experian.com or Smart Credit or Identity IQ, none of that stuff's there anymore. But the bureaus have it. It is part of my credit report at the bureau level. So they have all of that information. And the reason why that's important to them, because it paints a picture of who I am purely for marketing material, purely for them selling my data and then your data and everybody else's data to solicitors. I mean, that's one of the ways they make a tremendous amount of their money. So unfortunately, you and I, just as John Olsheimer said, he said, none of you guys will ever see, and he was talking to the class of credit experts. All of us were either credit expert witnesses or attorneys, or we were in credit repair or whatever it was that we were doing. And he said, you guys will never, ever see a real credit report in your entire life. Because frankly, it's just data. I mean, it's just massive and massive amounts of data. And by the way, even if you and I could see it, I don't think we would really understand it. I mean, it's just field after field after field after field, and who knows what format it's in. So what you and I get is just a regular consumer disclosure. Even Credit Versio gets more than we do. Credit Versio sees not a different report, but it sees more data than what you and I see. It's one of the reasons why it's better at doing the credit repair and dispute process than a human being. Is it gets what's called a JSON code. I'm sorry, this is getting a little too much detail, but it contains a little bit more data about every account. It's one of the reasons why it's so much better at comparing accounts across all 3 bureaus. Okay, let's see. Timothy, hey, welcome. Good to see you. Deshaun, hey, welcome back. Well, I have to keep taking on new accounts to increase credit score. Deshaun, it depends. Let me ask you this. Do you have at least 2 or 3 credit cards? Has anybody added you as an authorized user, preferably with an older credit card with no derogatory history, with a very low balance? Have you done that yet? One thing that you can't undermine or can't underestimate is the effect of time. Okay? Time is really what allows you to increase your credit score. So yeah, we'd love to do it. The only real cheat, or I shouldn't say cheat, but what do I want to call it? Ethical hack is to have somebody add you onto their credit card. Preferably it's old. Now I'm not gonna say go buy a trade line, but something you might look into. I wouldn't do that unless I was going to buy a house or a car or something like that. Okay, so you say yes, I have 4 credit cards. Keep the balances down. Big mistake that people make is they carry balances on all their cards. Don't do that. Use 1 card. Okay, I've got 4, maybe 5 credit cards. If I ever keep a balance, which is very rare, I only do my Capital One Venture card. In fact, that's really the only card I use is my Capital One Venture. I'll use the other ones every now and then just because I don't want the creditor to close them for lack of activity. So once every 3, 4, 6 months or so, I'll use all of them for something. But I primarily use 1 credit card and just give it time. Okay, I didn't realize we're running into 53 minutes, so thank you so much for being here with me today. Next week, I'll have John Alzheimer with me. Fingers crossed. He might have a small schedule conflict, but hey, listen, if he's not here, it's going to be you and me, and we'll talk credit. We'll talk about the dispute process and making everything better in your credit life. But for now, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining me today. And if you have any questions about this video or about any of the subject matter, just post it. I'll see it and I'll answer for you. Thanks again, and until next time.